Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Vandenberg with the IQ Business Group. I'm happy to be your moderator for today's webinar, Intelligent Information Management for Professional Services. I'm joined today by Greg Lloyd, VP of Client Delivery Services, and Carter Nath, MFILE Certified Delivery Specialist. We're proud to sponsor today's webinar to support our public and private sector folks, including Fed, SLED, and our private sector friends seeking knowledge and insight for effective information management, including making the most out of Microsoft 365 investments. If you're looking to progress in your digital transformation, we're here to help. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items. By default, all participants' microphones are muted. Please submit any questions through the webinar chat and we'll get to them at the end. And today's webinar will be available for all participants for replay within 24 hours. So be on the lookout for that email. IQBG, as we're known, is a leading provider of records and information management solutions for the public sector and highly regulated industries. Since 2008, the IQ Business Group has been developing ECRM and content services solutions that leverage people, process, and technology to support your requirements. We focus on your business first, including the entire information and records management lifecycle and how information management is impacted through all levels of the enterprise. This allows us to focus on the technology next, so we are able to recommend best possible solutions. We are also an MFILE certified delivery partner and can help you progress in your digital transformation with MFILEs.
Thanks, Maggie. Thanks for that. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time out of your busy day today to attend. I'd like to talk about information management at professional service firms in particular today. I'd like to just set the stage concerning the agenda, which will include describing the common situations at professional service firms, move into some of the issues created in those types of firms, and then importantly, we'll see a demo of some ways we believe the issues can be addressed using technology, in particular leveraging MFILEs Online, a document management system that has an ideal feature set for these types of problems. We'll finish with a recap of the impact that could be expected from the adoption of a tool like that. And finally, we'll open it up for QA. Next slide, yeah. So at professional service firms, we have knowledge workers. These firms are typical, this situation is typical at accounting and tax advisory firms, business management consultancies, tech and biotech consultants, and other similarly structured professional services. They make their money delivering knowledge. That is typically, if not always, supported by documents. I'm certain all of you know the types. There's Word documents, PDFs, Excels, PowerPoint, etc. Their work is usually structured as an engagement. They might call it a project or a job or a study or an audit, or some other name, but it's typical to group the work and the IP around an engagement-like structure. Almost all the staff are knowledge workers, meaning they work with, create, edit, and circulate documents. In today's world, that's all digital. Professional service firms need to manage client-related docs, project-related docs. They need to have efficient processes for projects and back office work. They need to secure and govern the documents they create according to regulations and standards and their own policies. Workers need to collaborate on materials as they're getting developed as client deliverables, and they need to secure their work. Common examples of some of the types of documents include NDAs, contracts, work products like strategy docs, audit results, regulatory trial submissions. All of these types of documents are developed collaboratively, and often these documents are supported with additional related documents. So there's the problem of relating these things together. If you would switch, yeah. So what's the big deal, right? You just create a folder for each project, put everything in there, and give everyone access. Well, I'm sure everyone's familiar with some of the issues created by an approach like that. First of all, not everyone thinks the same way, and whoever creates the folder structure first really has dibs. As an example, finance may want to look at invoices organized by date. Makes perfect sense. But project managers might want to see invoices organized by project. when they're doing their work. So it makes it hard for people to share and find information if it's according to someone else's paradigm. And of course, what this leads to is copies of the files for convenience getting stored in multiple places. Files also get sent around in email, and there's a proliferation there as well. A single doc can be sent and forwarded several times, and a single document isn't used to track the changes, and invariably an old version is referenced in a meeting or a collaboration, and someone is corrected and told they don't have the most recent document. Um, Contracts, NDAs, and other docs are often created using the last one we did instead of a standard. In doing so, errors can creep in. If you forget to do a search and replace on a term, or if you had some special wording for a particular artifact that crept in, and might not get deleted in the next one. So there's some risk there. Um, Often document approvals and reviews are done using email. So the email is used to route the document, a copy is attached. Now you have a copy, but you're also using email as a workflow, which is not the ideal use for email. You don't have a good audit trail when this happens. And then, finally, there's other issues. Records management, for example, might be anywhere on a spectrum at these types of firms, from non-existent to overly burdensome. So what we like to strive for when we consult with professional service firms is we like to make records management and this collaboration and this distillation to a single file a byproduct of the way you work, not an extra step that needs to be accomplished afterwards. So we want to eliminate the overhead. So given all those things, one would think, that there's a better way. Next slide. So at IQVG, our focus, as Maggie says, exclusively information management. We know how to assess the firm's maturity level in terms of their content management and records management practices, and we know the common tools in the marketplace that can be leveraged to address them. We believe mFiles Online is the right choice for a document management system for professional service firms. Carter's going to take us through a demo. He's going to show us some fundamentals and then get into some more complex use cases. He will show how mFiles can alleviate some of the issues I was just pointing out. I do want to stress, and I think Carter will probably say this as well, the demo really only scratches the surface. mFiles is exceptionally powerful in terms of the ease of modeling your business so that it can be tailored to your specific workflows, entity names, so project is a project or engagement or job, whatever the case may be. It also leverages metadata to allow users to organize files the way they want. So in my example from earlier, finance could have a view of invoices by date, while a project manager could have that same need filled with a view of invoices by project. There would just be a single copy of each invoice, but it would be served up the way that the user wants it. And we like to say that we organize information based on what it is, not on where it is. There's a great workflow tool built into mFiles, Carter will touch on, and it allows you to model your processes in your way. So you don't have to abide by the way we thought a document approval process should work. We can model your exact way. So with that, I'm going to be quiet. I know you're anxious to see the software do its magic, and I'll turn the floor over to Carter.
Thanks, Greg. All right, let's see here. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes.
And we can see it.
Do you see mFiles or do you see my desktop?
We see mFiles.
Perfect. All righty. So good afternoon, folks. So I'm here to show you how mFiles can work for professional services. mFiles can help in many areas, but we found that it's a great fit for the PS companies out there in helping them manage documents and automate key business processes, whether it's client onboarding, deliverable reviews, or managing key project or job milestones. mFiles has the ability to elegantly manage those processes and documents and is relatively easy to design and implement. mFiles provides an intuitive workflow designer, which allows quick turnaround for many business processes. I'll be showing some of the behind the scenes and the admin tool later, but for now I want to focus on the front-end user's perspective. So before I dive into an example workflow, I kind of want to describe what we're looking at here. And so a lot of times I'll describe this as kind of a two major areas. We have our four quadrants on the left and a supporting panel on the right. If I make a selection on the left, we'll have some support information to the right. So I'm going to click into this search field at the top, and you'll see that our filters tab has appeared. And these are basically filters that we can apply to a search. So this search bar is a full text search field, and we can extend it to do an advanced search based on key metadata elements on a particular document or object. So I'm just going to go ahead and do just a quick search for corporate services. So this is going to return anything that mentions corporate services, and it's going to highlight it where it's finding it. So here I've returned about 37 documents, 44 jobs, and a service line. And I'm just going to select one of these guys and take a look at the metadata card. You can see that it's highlighted not only in the name, but the other metadata elements where it's been found. And then if this document actually mentions corporate services in the document itself, it will also highlight it in the document preview. Now, I don't believe this document has that, but just a key point of information to mention there. So that's kind of just your full text search. This might be acceptable to some folks, but in some vaults, there could be thousands of documents and objects. And so narrowing down the search is beneficial. So what I'm going to do is add in a couple metadata properties and show how we can narrow down our search. So I'm going to look for, let's say, we're going to look for 14664, and this is for a client that is AL price. So we'll see that we've filtered out a bunch of other objects, and now we're down to 2 documents. And if I look here, let's say we want to find a proposal. So class equals proposal. And now we found our corporate services document for the client AL price that is a proposal. So this is just kind of your general search along with some of the extended advanced search functionality there, searching on metadata. So on the metadata card, I want to point out a few things that are returned for a given document. So next to these property definitions, you'll see asterisks next to metadata items that are required. Those without asterisks are optional. We are able to do automatic calculations and concatenation of fields. So for instance, this document title I know for a fact is a concatenation of the system property and the subject. And so that's automatically done for us. In addition to these fields that you're seeing here, we have these blue icons that show up to some of these fields. And what this shows is that this isn't a text field. This is actually a related object or document in the vault. And so this is great because when we have a document that is related to a project or a job or a client, we can easily navigate to those related objects straight from the metadata card, or even following the directory or the carets on the left-hand side here. And so if I select this object, it'll pop up in a new window, and here I can see the client AL price and some information about that client. And if I dig into that object, I can see all the related objects. So for instance, we have client partner, 10 documents, and this is where the document was that we had selected previously, and then the jobs that this client is associated to. So that is metadata that is relating a document to other objects and documents. Something else I want to point out on the metadata card, in the bottom left-hand side, we have our permissions, and on the bottom right-hand side, we have our workflow that is applied to a given document. So if I select this permission set, I can jump in there and see that Tanya and Kimberly are the only ones that have read access to this file, and we can see the state that this workflow is in. One thing to point out when we get into the demo of actually creating a workflow is that these permissions are going to automatically change on a state-by-state basis. So I'm going to jump back up to the home screen. Since we've kind of touched on search, great, we were able to find a document based off of what it is, not necessarily where it is. But we don't want to do a search every time. We want to have something that's saved and we can regularly go and work in that environment. So that's what we're going to see in this upper left-hand quadrant called Browse. Here we've got several views that are available. I have a tab called My Views. So these are views or saved searches that are personal to me. And then next I have common views. And so these are views that are set up by an administrator that can be made common to everybody in the organization, or it can even be, you can be very granular with the level of permission. So if you only want finance to see the view for jobs, then you can make that happen here as well. So I'm just going to jump into one of these views and show that same document by client. So it's AL price, and here's that same document. So just another way to get access to a document. The key thing to point out here is that, yes, this document came back in a search, but this document can be brought up in many views. And the key point is that this is one single document in the repository that can be spun up into multiple dynamic views. So what we're able to do is reduce duplicate documents for those situations. I think Greg already said the situation where you have a project manager who wants to see invoices by project versus somebody from finance wants to see invoices by date. You can spin those up and not have to worry about some paradigm that was created by someone else. And it just makes life easier on the end user when they're searching for documents that make sense for them. So coming back to the home screen, I want to point out just these other three quadrants. We have recently accessed by me, pretty self-explanatory. These are documents or objects that I've recently accessed. Checked out to me. So in M-Files, we have the ability to check out a document to make edits to prevent others from overwriting on that document. So this is where you'll see any documents that are checked out to you. You need to make your changes and then check it back in to make it available to other users. Assigned to me, this is where when a document or object is being controlled by a workflow and an assignment has been made for this user, it would appear in the assigned to me section. So now that we've covered kind of the basics of navigating, searching, and what we're looking at here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new client document. I've got a little scenario here where we're going to create an engagement letter, and that engagement letter is tied to a workflow that requires a review and approval. So right now I am signed in as Tanya. I'll be acting as two different people, Tanya and Kimberly. Tanya is a member of a job and is expected to create a new engagement letter to send out to the client AL Price. Kimberly is the client relationship manager for AL Price and is required to make an approval on any client documents. So one thing that I didn't really touch on and the basics of M-Files is that in M-Files we can create document templates. And so here I navigated to a view called templates, and any document that has the metadata property is template that is checked will return in this view. So I have one of those in this vault. And it just happens to be the template that I want to use for creating this document. So as Tanya, the job member, I'm going to go ahead and double click this document, and we're going to be prompted to enter in metadata. So as you can see, the document title says automatic, so I don't need to fill that in. I'm going to provide this with a subject, so I'm just going to keep it short and sweet, AL price. We'll leave it with AL price. And then this is for services, and the client is AL price. And this is for a job that I'm currently assigned to. So this is a filtered list. And then the subtype here is a list of subtypes. I know that this is an engagement letter general. And because this subtype list is related to another property on this metadata card, it is asking me if I would like to automatically fill that piece of metadata out. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. And you'll see down here that this filled in with a document type. And then I'm just going to put in an effective date. And I think that's all I will need for the moment. Again, I'm going to point out, I think I pointed this out previously on the other document, the permissions and workflow. Right now, the permissions for this document, as we're creating it, it's set to full control for all internal users, and the status is going to be set to created. This will automatically change as soon as we check this document back in. So just wanted to point that out for when we get to that step. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and click create and open for editing. And because this is a document template, I already have some pre-generated text here. But the cool thing about this template is that I've actually pulled in information from that client. So earlier I showed the client AL price and their contact information and their address, and we've automatically populated this template with the metadata from that client. So I'm just going to say I just needed this created. I'll come back in here and put in my recipient and date before I send it on for approval. There's still some work that needs to be done. So I'll close that out. But before I do that, one thing to mention is that mFiles is tightly integrated with the Microsoft Office suite of programs there. So Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, they all with a desktop installation come with a tab within the application there. So up in the ribbon, I can see that there's an mFiles tab. And this is actually how we've created this template and we've inserted these properties here. So just cool feature there, especially if you're a Microsoft shop. Just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to go ahead and close this document. It's prompting me to save it, and then I can check it back in. So now I'm just going to go back to my home screen, and I'm going to go under my recently accessed by me, and here's the document that we've created. And again, I want to point out permissions and the workflow. So we can see that it went from all internal users have full control, and now it says client documents. So I'm going to select this and just take a look and see what the permissions are. So here we can see that Tanya and Kimberly are the only ones that can read and edit, and Kimberly has rights to delete this. On top of the permissions changing, the workflow has automatically changed the status from created to new approval required. So in the workflow, we've got automatic triggers that are able to, where mFiles evaluates the metadata card and checks for certain parameters and automatically progresses the document forward in the workflow. So because this is an engagement letter that requires an approval from the client relationship manager, which is Kimberly here. In addition to that, the workflow can set properties for users. So when we created this, the document approver was empty, but the workflow has automatically set that property to the client relationship manager for AL price. So from here, I'm going to open up this document and make another edit. So we're just going to say that I'm going to send this to Karina for today's date. And we'll update the date field. And we'll save these changes and check it back in. Now that this document is checked in, I'm going to go ahead and push this forward in the workflow. So I'm going to say send for sign off. We can provide some comments here for the next user. I'm not going to do that for now. And so now this document is in a workflow and it is assigned to a different user. So Tanya still has rights to read this document, but it's currently assigned to Kimberly with an assignment description. So I'm going to change hats here for just a moment. I'm going to act as the client relationship manager. So give me a second to switch to her vault and refresh my screen. And we should receive an assignment. There it is. So as the client relationship manager, I've signed into the vault, and I can see that I have an assignment here with the description, and I can easily go in here and preview this document and see if there's anything that's concerning or if this is good to go. So I can see if this is going to Karina, and this engagement layer looks good to me. So I'm just going to take the simple action of approving this. So I'm going to go to state transition and click approve. Again, we can provide a comment, but I'm going to hold off on that. And so in this workflow, we've actually got electronic signature set up. So this is the mFiles flavor of electronic signatures. This basically just prompts you for authentication to authenticate that you are the user who is signing this document. One thing to mention here is that mFiles has several connectors out there, DocuSign and Adobe Sign that I know of. That are available. So if those are e-signature platforms that you would prefer to use, there are connectors for those. If you're interested in getting a look at that, please feel free to contact us and we can set up another session with you. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and use the mFiles e-signature and just provide my password and click sign. And now this is no longer in my area and as Kimberly, and it should be back with Tanya. So I'm going to switch hats again. Here I am in Tanya's vault, and I'm just going to refresh, and I should see this assignment come through. There it is. And so my assignment says send to the client and mark as published. So everything looked good to the client relationship manager. We can go ahead and send it off. So there's a couple ways that we can handle this. In this one, I'm going to show how easy it is to share a document to external users. You can either share a public link. This will create a public link that you can set an expiration on it. So maybe after 24 hours, they can no longer access it. If you're sharing with an internal member or a member that has access to the vault, you can just share the hyperlink. But in this case, I'm actually just going to send a copy of it by email to the client. And I can easily do that by going sharing email and PDF and send copy by email. So down here you can see it's blinking and mFiles has opened up Outlook, and here I can specify who I'm going to send it to and say something along the lines of, hi, please see it be attached. And then I can send that off. Again, just reiterating the integration with Microsoft. You can see up here in our ribbon, we've got mFiles tab where we can save attachments, save emails directly back to mFiles. But I'm not going to do that now, so I'll just go ahead and close this out and come back to the home screen. And now that we have published this document, we've sent it off to the client, I'm going to go ahead and say this is published and done. So that's a fairly simple process. There's a lot going on in the background. There's some cool features of doing e-signatures out there, setting properties and permissions along the way. But what I want to do is take a peek at the history tab and kind of point out something that Greg had mentioned earlier. And so basically what we have here is a single document that's gone through several versions or iterations, and all of those have been captured here in the history tab. So from document creation, where Tanya created it, mFiles evaluated the metadata card and automatically transitioned it to an approval routing. Tanya made some change during the approval requirement and then sent it off for awaiting signature. And then Kimberly signed it and Tanya published it. At any point in time, we could roll back to a previous version if for whatever reason we needed to roll back. It doesn't necessarily make sense for this particular document type, but you can imagine in a case where maybe you have a policy and something happened and the policy needed to revert to the previous year or something, you could easily go into that version and roll back. So this concludes the life cycle of this document, but now that we've created it, we've added metadata, let's pretend that we're going a couple months down the road and we need to, for some reason, go and find this email. We go and try to search our email this attachment that was sent to the client. We try to search the email for this attachment. We can't find it there. So what we would do is come in here to mFiles, and I can go in as Tanya. And since I'm a job member and I look at documents by job, it makes more sense for me to access a view that shows me documents by job and by class. So here I've got a view that is convenient for Tanya. I know that I sent out an engagement letter for corporate services 14664. I can easily access engagement letters, and here's our document. And to drive that point home further, if I switch over to Kimberly's view, go into my demo views and go, since she's the client relationship manager, I can look at client documents by client. I know this is for AL Price, and here I've got a bunch of documents for AL Price, but here's the document that we just created today. So kind of quick and easy way to, again, same document, multiple views. There's no document duplication here, and it just really quick and easy to find the document. Everything that you've seen in this process is configurable. So this can be tailored to your unique processes or your organization. This was just one flavor of how to approach that client document process and approval. So I think what makes sense now is for me to jump over to the admin tool and take a look at how are these objects and classes of documents configured, and how is the workflow configured. So I'm going to jump over here real quick, and I've got my professional services vault. I'm going to take a look at the metadata structure. And I know we briefly glanced over some of these other objects. So for instance, we looked at AL Price client, and this is the property definitions that are related to that particular client, so, or for a client object. So you've got your client name, who's the client partner there, are they active, inactive, and then what's their address and so forth. And then if I dig into documents, we've got a class group, so a group of classes, and we are working with the engagement letter. And here are all those attributes or metadata items that we filled in at creation. In addition to this, if we wanted to add a property or remove a property, really simple. We can just go in here, look at the properties and click add. And these are all the metadata items that are available in a vault. And if we needed a new one, we could create a new one right here. If we wanted to remove one, just select and click remove. Now I want to take a look at the workflow that we're working with. So because this was an engagement letter underneath client documents, this is automatically associated with the client document sign-off workflow. And we took the happy path. So I'm just going to kind of describe what you saw, right? So we created the document. We've got two transition points here, and each of these have automatic evaluations where mFiles takes this document in the status of created and checks the metadata for whether or not that requires an approval. And so the engagement letter client document does require an approval. So we went from created to new approval required. And then from there, we followed the process to awaiting sign off, approved it, ready for publishing. Tanya sent it out to the customer and then said it is published. So obviously there's many loopbacks that we could have gone through. Don't want to bore you guys with just clicking around on transitions, but there's a lot of things that we can do here, and it's really easy to manipulate these things and create new states and new transitions. If I didn't ping on it earlier, as we moved through this workflow at each given step, if we just double click on a state, we can see the actions that are happening on a given state. So when we went into the status of awaiting sign off, we set the permissions to be read only on this client document. So that's where Kimberly and Tanya could read only. And then we also made an assignment here to be the document approver. So that was probably a lot. I probably sped through it. So what I'm going to do is hand it back to Greg. That concludes the demo that I had prepared for you all, and we'll field any questions you may have.
Thank you, Carter. That's great.
Yep.
Maggie, if you could just put up that last slide. Perfect. So, depending on the study that you might read, there's estimates that knowledge workers spend anywhere between 1.5 and 4 hours a day looking for things. You can imagine that adds up. At a 500-person firm where the average salary is $70,000, that translates into about $9 million worth of money that could be probably used better. So any gain in efficiency frees up time, and it's either going to allow you to increase revenue or decrease your costs. So adopting a tool like mFiles and improving your information management can have a dramatic impact. Not to mention, you can drive standardization, improve collaboration, improve risk management and regulatory compliance, diminish risk by having audit trails. You can provide higher quality documents with better control by using templates. If something needs to be corrected, it's corrected in the template and used henceforth. You'll stop duplicating errors, missing search and replace actions, etc. So there's really a lot of gains on the information management side. Since mFiles Online is hosted, it can be installed on premise as well, but we typically recommend a hosted solution for the benefits. It also provides savings on the IT side. The licenses themselves come with a healthy quota of disk space, so you really minimize your IT footprint. So hosting it and providing it in the cloud has benefits, and the software has tremendous benefits for knowledge workers and information management. So that is what we wanted to whet your appetite with this afternoon. There is a lot there. There is a lot more that could be shown, and depending on your use cases, we'd welcome a conversation if you had ideas about the potential for the use of mFiles Online. So I'm going to just flip it back to the moderator, Maggie, and see if we've had any kinds of questions come in. Please feel free to ask away anything.
Okay, so first question, how much does all this cost?
So there's actually a number of additions. So there's, think of it as the trim line on a car. There's mFiles Standard, Professional, and Enterprise. And there's also, in each one of those flavors, there's a couple of license types. There's a named user, which is exactly what Carter was using today with Tanya and Kimberly. There's also a concurrent user license. So if you've got information workers that need to be in the vault, but they don't need to be in there 8 hours a day, concurrent user license might support 10, 15 users, depending on your situation. So that's something we can look at. And then there's read-only users. So each of those licenses has a slightly different price, but I'll keep it simple to answer the question. Named users is the most common deployment, and a named user runs from anywhere from $39 to $59 a month per user, depending on the edition. More information on the editions can be found at mfiles.com/editions, or if you just go to mfiles.com and type in editions in the search bar, it'll take you right to the page that shows you what's included in each. And as you move up the scale, there's additional add-ins that may be useful depending on your use case for things like compliance, electronic signatures, records management, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully that gives you kind of a ballpark. I know it's not a firm answer, but we'd love to understand the situation and provide an accurate one.
All right, and last one, is storage included?
So I alluded to it just a minute ago. There is storage included. If it was an on-premise vault, you would actually control the storage. But in the hosted version, there is it's a healthy quota. I would have to look up the exact amount. But over 90% of mFile's clients do not ever need to purchase additional storage. So the default quota is sufficient for more than 90% of their clients. So that should give you an idea that and some comfort that you should have enough storage. And again, that's something we could tackle in an initial setting and drill into just to confirm if it was someone had a question about it.
Okay,
Any other questions? You have any others there, Maggie?
that's it.
You want to wrap us or you want me to?
That's going to do it for us today. Thanks everybody for attending. We hope today's webinar has provided you with insight on our outcome-focused approach to to intelligent information management. As a reminder, please be looking for the email letting you know that this webinar is available for replay. That'll go out in about 24 hours. If you come up with any additional questions, our contact information is right there on the slide. Feel free to reach out. Stay safe, everybody, and stay healthy.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good one.